This is a project that we're all very, very excited about, so we're happy to see each and every one of you here, and hopefully you will take the news that you're here this evening and spread it throughout the community. I'm Judy McNeil, I'm principal of Walton High School, and at this time I would like to introduce the moderator of the meeting. It's Mr. John Stafford. So Mr. Stafford, at this time we will get the meeting started.
Thank you, Mrs. McNeil. She said, my name is John Stafford. I actually attended Walton the first year it opened in 1975 as a freshman, graduated in 79, came back and taught in the district in 83. We taught here for 7 years before moving on to some other responsibilities in the district. So this is near and dear to my heart, and hopefully get some good information out to you tonight. Before I introduce the panelists up on stage, I'd like to recognize, I see Mr. David Banks, board member in the audience. Are there any other board members here tonight that I haven't? No, that's okay. Thank you for being here, Mr. Banks. And now to introduce our panel this evening, first of all, the Post 6 board representative is Mr. Scott Sweeney, that represents here Walton High School. Mr. Ragsdale, our superintendent. Mr. Adams, our chief operations officer and chief human resources officer, but he's got his operations hat on tonight. And Mr. Nick Parker, our senior executive director of SPLOST. So over the next hour, what we're going to do is Mr. Sweeney and Mr. Parker have some information that they're going to share with you. And at the conclusion of that, then we'll take questions from the audience. And the way that we'll do that is that we have some index cards where you can write your questions down. They'll bring them up to me, and I'll ask the panelists those questions for you, and any of them might chime in at that point in time. We'll get those index cards out to you a little bit later in the program as Mr. Parker is concluding his remarks, so that you'll have some time to pose your questions. So with that, I'd like to turn over to Mr. Sweeney to give you some information.
Thank you, John. Is this live? Can you all hear me okay? First of all, thank you very much for being here. This is a very, very important step in the process that we've been going through for some time. And just for a little background, in starting back when this school was constructed, one of the things that it was designed under was an open classroom concept. Some of the walls did not even go all the way to the ceiling. And so this campus, for a long time, there's been a lot of modifications that have been made to it. But Cobb County grew substantially since when this school was first built, 1975. The SPLOST initiatives that we've done, SPLOST 1, 2, and 3, have constructed many new schools all throughout Cobb County or conducted many renovations. For Walton High School, one of the things that we recognize with this particular school, it has the least acreage per student of any school in the entire county. We have very limited land here. And then secondly, as far as the ratio of instructional units, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that, it has fewer instructional units per student than any other school for the high school level. These things alone aren't the only reasons why Walton needs this. There's also projected growth that's occurring in the community. When I talk to realtors in the community, one of the things that they share with us is that we have a lot of senior citizens that are selling their homes, and families with children are moving in. Many of you understand that Eastside Elementary School was recently rebuilt. Before the school was rebuilt, the enrollment there was only about 900 students. Today that enrollment is almost 1,200 students. And for those of you that reside in the community, you know that there hasn't been that brand new development to bring those students here. Some of that was very conscious. It could have been because of the economy and people making a conscious decision to send their children from private school to public school. Some of it is because of some growth in the area, and some people just made a very conscious decision to send their children to the public school. Those same things are beginning to occur here. Walton has an incredible reputation. It's a dynamic school. It's one of the finest schools in the state. It's recognized internationally. It's recognized nationally. U.S. News and World Report, among others, has ranked Walton very, very high. And it'll continue to do that. And one of the things that Walton has as well is being a conversion charter school, it has a lot of flexibility. And so what you're going to hear tonight is a little bit about what the superintendent is recommending to the board as far as the project to move forward. And above and beyond that, what you'll be hearing is a little bit of hopefully the project timeline. So with that in mind, a couple other things I want to point out, and I don't know if John mentioned this, but as far as the Q&A is concerned, did you address how we're going to do that?
Yes, sir. We're going to take Q&A via the cards that we'll pass out during Mr. Parker's presentation.
Okay. As far as the timeline is concerned, some of the things that this Board of Education has done, initially, SPLOST 4 was approved by the board, and then it was approved by the voters in Cobb County. And once that occurred, in January of this year, we actually were prepared to take action. We actually had a snow event, so it ended up being a February meeting this year. And simultaneously, the Board of Education unanimously approved projects for Walton High School, for Wheeler High School, and also for Teasley Elementary School. Now, if you've been driven around the area, you're probably seeing some of the action already at Wheeler High School. Teasley is already in process as well. We're doing a 20 classroom addition at that school. But why hasn't anything occurred here at Walton? The truth is we wanted to be able to turn dirt as soon as possible, go through the design phases and everything else. Simultaneously, we actually were in the process of updating a demographic study. The demographic study is something that the district does on a routine basis. It wasn't really anything special, but we needed to update it. And when the numbers came in, it was projecting that the enrollment at Walton High School would actually grow to approximately somewhere between 3,200 to 3,600 students by the year 2023. The classroom design, or the school design that we were initially looking at was about 2,800 students. So you're thinking, okay, if I'm going from 2,800 and I have this many more students, what does that mean? What does it look like from a land standpoint? What does it look like from a parking standpoint? These are all important considerations. We just did a major renovation over at Wheeler High School, and one of the things that Wheeler High School endured was they actually had 38 portable classrooms on that campus during the renovation. At Walton, because of the landlocked nature and the topography here, putting up portable classrooms and going through a construction process simultaneously isn't really an option. We still need a viable way to continue to serve 2,700 to 2,800 students at this campus while undergoing a major construction project. So these dynamics, particularly when we saw the enrollment growing from 3,600 students, says, what's the best way? What are our options? What can we do? And so this evening, what you're going to hear from Mr. Parker is a little bit of how I think the administration is going to make its recommendation to proceed to go forward. And without further ado, I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Parker.
And Mr. Sweeney, I think bears pointing out, part of that Wheeler project was actually started within SPLOST 3. So what you're seeing now happening at Wheeler was already in the design from the original SPLOST 3 project, and what is happening now is more limited in scope, I believe.
Point, John. Some of the things, and this district has demonstrated that it does the right thing as far as schools are concerned. For example, when Clarkdale Elementary School, those of you in 2009 remember the big flood event that we have at Clarkdale was closed. We were able to cobble together funds from insurance proceeds, from capital outlay funds, from internal funds as well, to rebuild Clarkdale Elementary School. Within the new Smyrna School, we did a right thing for that community, and we actually planned on building that school and increasing capacity so that we'd be able to accommodate more students. Well, that school's already at capacity, I believe. At Teasley Elementary School, we actually had to bifurcate the campus. K through 1 is going to Brown presently, and the balance of the students are actually attending Teasley Elementary School. The school was so crowded that we were actually serving lunch, I think, beginning at about 9:30 in the morning in some instances. So we expanded the classrooms addition that was projected for Teasley Elementary from 10 classroom addition to a 20 classroom addition. And these are just some examples. But with regard to Wheeler, Wheeler, essentially, we had SPLOST $3 that were allocated for Wheeler High School, and we actually worked to modify the project's scope a little bit so that we could do the right thing for the campus. And I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Scott. It is a pleasure to be here back at Walton again. We've spent quite a bit of time out here the last several months, and I want to just repeat a little bit of the chronological timeline that has occurred that Scott referenced. You all may remember that SPLOST 4 was passed by the voters in March of 2013. Following that, the first revenue, sales tax revenue dollars started generating to SPLOST 4 in January of this year, 2014. We shortly thereafter, as Scott referenced, were scheduled for a board meeting on January 30th, and some of you may remember that infamous day. It was a snowmageddon, if you will. So the board meeting was postponed till February, early February, which we did take the construction manager at risk approach to the board, and they approved it for Teasley, Wheeler, and Walton High School all simultaneously at that meeting. We commenced our design and our planning at that point in time through the spring of 2014. We actually submitted a phase-out board agenda item to the board to phase out the existing Walton High School. This is something that's required by the Georgia Department of Education. Before we replace a school, we have to submit documentation to phase out an existing school. So we were well on our way with regard to turning dirt at Walton. We did go about our normal demographic study, as Scott referenced. We got the results of that in actually June of this year, and Scott indicated the numbers. So we actually took a pause in our planning and programming at that time to try to better assess our building program and determine what our recommendations should be going forward. We did a lot of analysis, and one of the things we did is that we recognized that a demographic study is really just an indicator of possible student enrollment going forward. It's very difficult and challenging to predict the number of students that the school's going to have in the next 5 years, much less 10 years. So we realized that that was an indicator. So we wanted to do a further analysis. We actually went back for the previous 10 years at Walton and looked at the student enrollments over the past 10 years. From 2004 through this year, and the count of Walton as of today is 2,668. We actually went back 10 years and looked at the demographics, and we realized that over the last 10 years, the average number of student increases at Walton has been 7 students per year. That was quite interesting to us, obviously. So in looking at that, we really tried to determine what is our best recommendation going forward. And we came forward with the thought that we should build Walton High School, again, as Scott indicated, without bringing on multiple numbers of portables, allowing the school to continue to operate as we're trying to build around it. And what we determined is that we should construct a school with 143 instructional units, or classroom entities, if you will. That literally is about a 20% increase over the current 119 instructional units that you all have today. Our plan today calls for a little over 441,000 square feet. Currently, there's a little over 307,000 square feet at Walton. So this would be an increase of over 43% in square footage for the students here at Walton High School. With that plan, we intend to take to the board next month, early November, our recommendation for the replacement of Walton High School. We'll bring in our first, what we call a guaranteed maximum price, and we will recommend that we go forward in building that school of that size. We intend to start construction as early in 2015 as possible, sufficient enough to have the first classes available in the new classroom building at the beginning of school year 2017. We then would follow on with that with the new gymnasium, a 3,000-seat gymnasium, and a 750-seat auditorium. This seats here today about 450. We would have those two structures completed and the campus pretty much finalized by beginning of the school year of 2018 for the gymnasium and the Performing Arts Theater. We would then look at growth and determine what growth is going forward. We intend to have a demographic study performed each year hereafter so that we can keep up with the type of projections that might be expected, and we would try to accommodate then, or we would accommodate then, any growth by the building of new structures or added capacity as needed. I will share with you that Scott did mention we have a very constrained campus here. We have 43 acres. It certainly, we have had ongoing efforts to try to increase the amount of capacity or the amount of acreage that would be available so that we could improve the footprint of the school site and provide what we think would be somewhat of a better footprint for the school itself. So therein lies, I guess, the plan as we will present to the board next month, and with that we expect approval by the board, and that would allow us to commence our finalizing of our design. We're at about 80% of schematic design now, and we would need to finish that design so that we could then start our mobilization of the contractor or the construction manager and commence with our site work and our utility relocation, all the things that go into earth and the property before you actually start erecting the building. So that's our plan in concise terms. And John, I think we're probably ready for any questions that might want to be presented to us.
All right, sir, I know several people are writing some questions down. I'll let Mr. Williams to collect those and bring them up. Would like to point out, if I remember correctly, with the layout of this campus, that some of that 43 acres actually lies below or beneath electrical transmission lines, which means that they're unusable acres in terms of putting a building under it. So that plays into that whole scenario as well. And as Mr. Sweeney alluded to in his remarks, there's obviously a lot of logistics that have to go along with how the whole campus will work while it's under construction. And fortunately, they have somewhat of a model that they can draw from with Wheeler and how they went about doing things, and see how they can adapt those to this campus. Okay, y'all gonna make me put my glasses on.
I want to talk a little bit too about the demographics because it's not an exact science. It really is more kind of a goalpost, a metric, and to be honest with you, the impacts of the economy, the impacts of future development, jobs, any number of things can really make a significant change here. And for example, just a few short years ago, the number that was projected for Walton High School was about 2,300 students, I believe. 2,300 students, and today we're at 2,700. So it's not an exact science. And the thing is that you try to get as accurate as you possibly can, but there's no way to actually pinpoint the number.
All right, sir, so our first question, which was submitted by several people, is will you be looking at purchasing additional land in any of the surrounding neighborhoods or areas adjacent to the campus to increase the footprint of the campus?
We would certainly be interested in acquiring additional property. Again, we recognize the constraints of a 43-acre site. As Scott indicated, it's one of the smallest footprints that we have of any high school in Cobb County. And so increased acreage would certainly improve the site and the capability of Walton to accommodate a new school. So we are certainly interested in acquiring additional property, yes.
All right, sir, and when I was a high school assistant principal, I always said that the three most important things in a high school student's life were prom, parking, and graduation tickets. So we had to have a question about parking, and that is, will there be adequate student parking with the new facility? And in the interim, what will happen with student parking during the construction phase? Will they be able to maintain the level of parking that they have now?
We have not finalized the plans. Again, we're we're at about 80% schematic design, which in the overall design is about 20 to 24% maximum amount of design. So we are very cognizant of the parking situation here at Walton. I think Ms. McNeil indicated you have about 650 spaces today, and I know that is even critical to increasing that going forward. Our ultimate design would certainly look for additional parking. Some of that may be based upon acquiring additional property, but on an interim basis, we've got to find a construction laydown area. We've got to find parking for construction workers. We do not intend to park construction workers on the campus and take those away from the students. We will find adequate parking for construction and laydown while the course of construction is ongoing. So we are going to attempt the best we can not to reduce parking during our interim period, but we have not finalized those plans yet, and so we need to do a little bit more scrutinizing of our parking plan. Ultimately, we do plan to have additional parking and increased parking in the final design.
And just to translate one of those terms into layman's terms, the construction laydown is the additional space around the construction site where the building's going up, where they have to bring in materials such as steel and brick and all that kind of stuff. Two questions that are related. Do you expect a redistricting before this project is complete? And then the other one that's related to it, redistricting to move students to schools that are not at capacity. Who wants to take that hot potato?
I'll take it. I have no plans for bringing a recommendation for redistricting the Walton attendance zone. I've talked to Mr. Sweeney at length about this, and we are both on the same page that there are no plans to bring a redistricting for Walton forward. And if you're familiar with the legislation, there is specific legislation to Cobb County that requires certain parameters be met for redistricting. One of which is that any one board member can oppose a redistricting recommendation in the affected area. So if a redistricting recommendation is brought forward and I'm a board member and it affects my area, one vote is all it takes to negate the redistricting. So again, I've talked with Mr. Sweeney, and he is not for any redistricting. And I'm not for bringing the recommendation. So between the two, I feel very confident in telling you that you can feel confident that there's not going to be a redistricting for Walton.
And Chris is right. He and I have spoken about this, and I don't favor redistricting. I don't think it solves the problems as far as enrollment and everything is concerned. And when you look at the neighboring areas and you look at the projections that were put forth in the demographic study, the neighboring schools are all projected to grow as well. So it doesn't make sense to do, shift students from this school to another school to solve, what some people perceive as the problem. So the right thing to do is to rebuild Walton High School with the additional units.
And this is a follow-up to what you were just talking about, and that is, we're all aware of a demographic study that was done. Mr. Sweeney, you alluded to that in your remarks. But was there not a second demographic study that was done in follow-up to that first? And if so, what were the results of that second study?
Yes, we did do a reassessment or a third-party validation simply because we felt as though this decision is certainly important, and we wanted to get a third-party independent assessment. That assessment came back actually fairly close to what the initial assessment was. It actually came in at about slightly under 300 students less than what the initial assessment. The initial assessment came in at about 3,500 students. Again, in the year 10 years from now, which is a very, very difficult thing to hone in on. And the assessment came in at about 3,200 students versus that 3,500 students.
So you used another term earlier, instructional units, and mentioned the number of instructional units, but what does that translate into the number of students that the new building will have a capacity for?
the number of instructional units is a term that we get from the Georgia Department of Education. Each instructional unit can range from a classroom for social studies or a chemistry lab to a media center, to a gymnasium where instruction is provided, or the space in which instruction is provided. There really is a range of numbers that equates to one instructional unit, and a good example of that is that, again, if you were to use a social studies or an English class, you might have as many as 35 or so students in that particular class, whereas if you have a science lab, a chemistry lab, that would certainly be something less, maybe 25 or 28. So it's really a wide variation. With 143 instructional units, it could be in a range anywhere from probably 2,700 up to possibly 2,800 or more. 3,000 even. We currently have a school with 143 units that has over 2,800 students in it, and there is some thought that we could certainly accommodate up to 3,000 or so students with 143 instructional units.
Okay, so with the design of the building, with the limited acreage, are you looking at a multi-story building in contrast to the single-story building that they currently have?
Yes, the classroom that we are looking at, the classroom building that we would be looking at would be a multi-story building, somewhere around 3 or 4 stories today. That is not uncommon in the area in which we reside. Certainly other county districts have constructed schools of that size. Teasley Elementary that Scott just referenced is a multi-story elementary school. Smyrna Elementary that we just opened a year or so ago is a multi-storied structure. So the academic building that we are foreseeing currently is a multi-storied building.
Okay, I told you parking was a hot issue, so we're back to parking. And those of you that are asking questions about the athletic facilities, I'm grouping those and coming to those. Has there any consideration been to using a multi-story parking deck, or where do you envision all those parking spaces going once the project is complete?
We would not want to construct a multi-storied parking deck at Walton High School, nor any high school or school within Cobb County. We're familiar with some around the metropolitan area. Safety is our primary concern. Student drivers, I know, are safe, but we would just be cautious about that. So we are not desirous of a multi-level parking garage. The parking spaces that we're talking about, we're looking again at possible additional acreage that if it comes to fruition, that we could possibly relocate some of the athletic fields, possibly softball, possibly the tennis courts, those kinds of structures on adjacent property, which would allow and open up additional space for some parking.
Okay, now I got to sort a little bit more because I think that answered a few questions. Another question about the building itself. I guess there was an original schematic that might have gone out that looked at a 4-story building with science on the 4th floor and what was going to occupy about half of the 4th floor. So what was the rest of the building being built?
Okay. We have looked at a 4-story academic building. Bob Sussenbach is our lead architect on the design, and he has worked with Ms. McNeil and her staff intimately to try to determine the best layout for a building based upon all the instructional needs of Walton High School. So the rest of the building obviously would accommodate not only all the classroom needs, but also the cafeteria, the media center, the orchestra, the band, and those kinds of things would be accommodated as well. Now, the Performing Arts Theater currently would accommodate the orchestra and the band and all the music programs. The gymnasium would accommodate all the various athletic requirements for Walton. The classroom building itself would predominantly just house the class. You still there?
Check.
Hello. So again, the classroom would accommodate most of the instructional needs for Walton High School. I hope that answers the question.
And a follow-up to that additional instructional question, many educators now teach using project-oriented education. In designing the new building, are architects, planners considering the way students are being taught today and into the future?
Scott, do you want to address that, or Scott?
It actually gives a very unique opportunity for Walton. Ms. McNeil, we've had many conversations about it, and I know she took several road trips to look at different schools and how they teach differently today. Technology is, of course, my background, and moving forward, technology is going to play a critical role in education. It's not going to replace the teacher, or it's not going to replace anything, but it is going to be a tool to allow teachers to utilize different teaching techniques per se. So Walton is going to be uniquely positioned by being able to build a 21st century classroom building that's going to allow Judy to take advantage of everything that she's wanting to do utilizing technology. So anything from being able to have, and I know we're currently working on this, about being able to use distance learning. Where, with our technology infrastructure, it's going to be very possible to do basically in-district virtual classrooms, if you will. So looking at virtual classrooms, looking at potentially where students are not going to be in a traditional classroom as we're talking today, but then have the academic building built in such a way that's able to take advantage of that. And that's not to say to be able to take advantage of a fad that Mr. Sweeney mentioned a little bit ago, where we had open classrooms and walls that didn't go to the ceiling and these kind of things. But it's actually taking advantage of teachers being able to teach in a uniquely, in a different way, an innovative way. So it's not necessarily fixing education, because it's my belief that education is not broken. Obviously, in the school you're in, it's one of the highest performing schools in the state. Education is not broken with the results that Walton is getting from the teachers, the hard work the teachers are doing in the classroom. But to take performance, student performance, to a different level, it is necessary to be able to do things differently, not to make things be done differently, but to allow the flexibility and the innovation for the great teachers to do different things in different ways. So I think it gives us the unique ability at Walton to be on the cutting edge of something new and exciting. And especially in Cobb, it's no secret that Cobb is one of the top school districts in the state and the nation. And it's because of the work that goes on at places like Walton that a new facility like this is going to give Walton a unique advantage.
In addition to the distance learning things that Mr. Ragsdale was speaking of, there's also an opportunity to push out education. And what I mean by this, and I'll just use Dr. Hugh McLeod. Many of you may know or be aware of Dr. Hugh McLeod. He was a remarkable physician that served as a team doctor here at Walton. But individuals are very interested in putting forward a sports medicine educational unit in his memory here on this campus, and to be able to broaden. Speaking of broadcasting, that's just another example, and creating the opportunity to allow a little flexibility, which, first of all, Walton already has. I mean, it has demonstrated remarkable governance of being a conversion charter school with all the remarkable achievements that it has academically. And then it's going to, that will continue in the future, and they'll have opportunity to determine how that's going to be looking forward.
Yeah, John, I'll give you one more example. And we're getting to be like Survivor with these mics up here. I think there's only 2 people left on the island. I'm 46 years old. When I went to high school back when the earth was cooling, we called it the library. And then it evolved into the media center. And now more and more people that at least are on the cutting edge of this it's evolving into something called a learning commons, which it probably resembles a Starbucks as much as it does a traditional library, where you'd walk in, you'd see kids in groups working on projects, working on computers, cooperatively, and it would focus more on information and technology and not so much books and paper. And we're hopeful that this will allow Walton to be really a showplace for all of Cobb County, and we hope that people from around the state will come look and see what Walton's able to do with this Learning Commons idea in the new facility.
Okay, regarding the acquiring of additional land, has any consideration been given to accessing or purchasing the land currently used by garbage trucks behind the white building on Pine Road? What is the result of the inquiry? I believe what they're referring to, across the street that way, there is the land that was owned by Lonnie Murdoch way back in the day. And she was advanced in age when I left here 23 years ago, so it's probably her heirs that have it now. But I know that was being used as a landfill much of the time, so I don't know if y'all have looked into that or not.
I think we should probably just say that we are looking at all property around the campus and look at what it could possibly improve upon the site that we currently have. Rather than getting into specifics this evening, I think you need to just understand that we are looking at all the property surrounding Walton for possibilities of acquiring or enhancing the footprint.
And these are all related, so I'm going to take these kind of in order here, but I'll stop after each one to give you a chance. What accommodations will be made to the varsity teams whose practice facility and field are being displaced, such as softball? I know you addressed softball a little bit earlier, but in regards to that, there's some concern that there was an early version of the site plan that would move the softball field to the one practice field that they have, and where would other teams be able to practice if that was the case?
We again are looking at those plans. We have not finalized any of these plans yet. We certainly are aware of the practice needs of all the athletes here at Walton. You all have awesome athletic teams, and your record stands for itself. So we do not want to diminish your capability of preparing for your sporting events. So we're cognizant of that. Without getting into a lot of details here, we've looked at additional practice capability. So it is our intent not to diminish that.
And during the period of construction, if necessary, would the district look at providing facilities off campus, say maybe parks in the area, that type of thing? And if so, would the county provide transportation to those off-site practice locations?
We certainly are looking at the option of off-site accommodations. Again, we have not gotten into any specific details yet, but that is an option that we're considering. We would want to try to lessen the extent of that as best we can, because we know, if you can maintain yourself at least close to the campus, it would be better. But that is an option we need to consider.
And there is a stream that runs through campus. Actually, part of it is culverted underneath the visitors' grandstands. Would the district consider, I guess that is controlled by the Corps, and the question is about committing to apply for a permit from the Corps of Engineers to do something with that creek to make that land more usable?
You all certainly know your property here. Yes, there is a stream, and yes, we have already applied for that permit from the Corps of Engineers. Good question.
I think Nick made a very good comment. I mean, when you start to take a look at the usable acreage that you have here, it really, really is a challenge. When I got together initially with members of the Walton Facility Foundation, Patty Morgan, Vonda Shoemaker, Judy McNeil, one of the things that we looked at was all of the barriers that you have here. I mean, you've got the power lines to the north, you've got wetlands essentially south of the property with a creek. You have to manage all the storm drainage that comes off the property, so you need adequate detention as far as capturing that runoff. You have unique topography. All of these things present some incredible challenges as far as what you can do. And again, I mean, it just goes to the complexity with this project. And what we were talking about earlier was essentially, having the academic building ready by a certain time. And this is going to be, at least a 2 plus 3 year project. At the end of the day, the academic building constructed first. You're going to have the students move from this building over to the academic building, and then portions of this area raised to allow for the construction of the gymnasium and for the performing arts area. So it's a very detailed project, and again, with lots of moving parts here. As far as, we hear lots of different suggestions. We hear, well, why don't you just build a brand new school in a different area? Well, those of you who reside in this area know, where do you see a 40-plus acre tract of land in East Cobb? Those things are just not available right now. And then in addition to that, doing the right thing here at this community really makes the most sense.
And this question's been asked numerous times here on the cards, and that is, would you please confirm or deny that this entire project, academics, gym, fine arts, athletics, et cetera, will all be included in the SPLOST 4 funds and schedule?
That is our plan. We have every intent upon completing the entire rebuild within this SPLOST, and as Scott just indicated, with the academic building being the first part that would be ready in a couple of years for the beginning of school in 2017, with the gymnasium and performing arts theater being completed and ready for occupancy in the school year beginning in 2018. So that is our intent, yes.
Mr. Adams, you've been rather quiet over there, so here's a question straight for you. How do you plan to keep students safe on campus with major construction going on? And a question from somebody else kind of plays into that. Have you considered doing construction outside of the regular school day?
There's nothing more important than student safety. So we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that students are safe during this process. That's where we're going to have to be very, very careful and look at the footprint and the layout and try to do as much of this as we can during the summer, obviously, and then during non-school hours. But the good news is this is not our first rodeo. And so we do have some experience in doing construction at schools, but this school, as Scott pointed out, does have some unique challenges. So rest assured that we're going to do everything we possibly can to make sure that we maximize student safety, and that is the most important thing. If it takes taking a little longer, going the extra mile, then we'll do what we need to do to make sure that students are safe, because at the end of the day, that is the absolute most important thing to us. We want to give you the school that you need to have, but first and foremost, we need to make sure that your kids are safe.
Let me jump in here too. One thing that we're doing and planning to do is do the construction without the utilization of portable units. Scott has already mentioned that. That plays into student safety. Obviously, when you look at the plat of the campus, placing enough portable units on the campus would be a challenge in and of itself, but that could create a safety issue as well. So that's one of the things that we decided up front and very quickly, that we wanted to have this construction project go on while the students were in the building and not have to be relocated and inconvenienced to portable units. So that's a big issue in and of itself. And as John mentioned, this is not our first rodeo. We built Eastside Elementary School. Now, granted, a little bit more friendly, constructible land lot, if you will. But we built that school while school was in, and then moved them in and demoed the old building. So it's not a new process for us. But we do want to make sure that everybody understands that the student safety is of the utmost priority and importance. And also, I think that plays into the students that are going to be here during the construction, not having them spend their senior, junior years in portable units is also something that we took into consideration, because while it's going to be great to get a new building, you don't want the seniors and juniors going through that their last few years of high school.
Part of the importance of getting this done too, and it wasn't that many years ago, and remember that SPLOST 1, I think, was 1998. Is that right? 1998?
I think so.
After SPLOST 1, we actually were up to about almost 700 portable classrooms across the district, almost 700 portable classrooms. And because of SPLOST and what it's done in the building of new schools, Cobb County has actually whittled that down, and we're below 100 portable classrooms today. 5 of those portable classrooms still are here presently. And so it's been really important from the communities when we hear it loud and clear, we need to get rid of these portable classrooms. But I can tell you what's so important, it's either going to be through some kind of a SPLOST initiative or it's going to be through some kind of a bond initiative to accommodate growth in this county. These types of programs will hopefully keep us away from having to go down the portable classroom route again, so we can address growth as it takes place.
The issue of safety is obviously traffic as well during the construction process, in and out. If we need to, for example, have an additional campus officer here to help make sure that kids can get in and out safely, we'll by all means do that as well.
And Mr. Adams, that was a great segue into my next question about traffic and other things around the campus, both during construction and if as capacity increases down the road. Has there been any conversations with Cobb County Government DOT about the alignment of Bill Murdoch Road and widening it, traffic flow patterns, that type of thing?
The answer is yes. We work very closely with the Cobb County Department of Transportation. They provide traffic analysis. They provide traffic studies to us. They assess traffic patterns around our schools. We have already communicated and had some work with the Cobb County Department of Transportation with regard to the Walton site. And so, yes, we do involve them significantly into our planning and to our layout of traffic flows as we plan and design this new school.
And next question is, are the demographic studies available online? I know the answer to that question is yes, but I don't know exactly where to direct them to.
Demographic study that we had performed that was available to us is online. And I'm trying to remember, it is a link on the Cobb County school website. We can provide that to Judy, and she can publish that in on the school website so that folks will know where that is.
If you go to the Cobb County School District website, www.cobbk12.org, you can find a link to the demographic study, and it's under the SPLOST department. So you'll find it on the left-hand side. It'll show you, and it's actually quite a large file. It's separated into 2 different files, but it's accessible on the Cobb County District website.
One comment, that is to please consider preserving as much green space around the school as possible. But the question was, have you considered a freshman academy building similar to what several other high schools in Cobb have?
We have not considered a freshman or 9th grade center at this point in time. We think, again, with our multi-storied academic building that we can accommodate the numbers of students that Walton is expecting. Certainly, if in fact the growth evolves to the point where we need to accommodate additional capacity at the school, I think a 9th grade center would be one of our considerations, not knowing exactly what the ultimate decision would be, but that is an option that we would consider, I think, going forward, but no plans currently.
And a question, because it does kind of get into specifics, and I think that this is probably within the scope of the schematics that are currently underway, but the question was, where would a 3 to 4 story building be located on campus?
Okay, the current thinking is that we will locate the 3 to 4 story academic building on the area that currently houses the softball field and the tennis court area. So those two facilities will need to be relocated or housed possibly off campus for a period of time while we construct the multi-storied academic building in that location.
And since you brought that up, facilities around the campus, particularly athletic facilities such as the stadium, the softball field, and so forth, were paid for the most part by parent funds, booster club funds that raise money to put those facilities in. Will the county replicate those facilities into the new construction so that the parents aren't back to foot another bill for that?
We certainly will replace any facility, any fields that we need to relocate within this plan. Again, at this point in time, the two specific areas that we're looking at replacing would be the softball field for the girls softball team, and then also the tennis court area.
And not working in their office, I'm going to go far out on a limb here and suggest that probably they don't have any plans to relocate the stadium.
There are no current plans to relocate the stadium. Raider Valley will be there.
There's a lot of history there. Is there been any coordination with zoning and development about higher density housing that is underway on Johnson Ferry Road, and how that might factor into changing demographics with older students with older citizens with no students?
As far as the zoning and all that, the Board of Education nor the school district has any control over that. Those are completely independent of what the school district would be in control of. As far as the development, for example, Park Air Landing, adjacent to that, just north of that shopping center, they're putting in about 125 new units. I think it's 85 single-family dwellings and about 40 townhome units. But if you take a look, and if you were to populate those, you average out about 3.5 people per home. You're going to have some that'll have students in elementary school, some that are going to be in middle school, some that are in high school. The impact even of a development of that size is not that great as far as impacting the enrollment of the schools. Where we're probably going to see more growth from is that we have a lot of senior citizens, and I'm sure we have a lot of realtors in the audience here, but there are a lot of senior citizens that chose very consciously not to sell their homes after 2008 and when the economy went into the tank. And they remained in their homes. They lost a lot of equity. Much of that has rebounded today. And now they've been in the homes 5, 6, 7 years longer, and what they're determining is, says, shoot, I'm 5, 6, 7 years older, I'm an empty nester, I may have had some deferred maintenance, and it's time for me to sell and downsize. And what we're going to see more people moving in with families and children into this community than I think we'll see an impact from the housing developments.
Has there been any consideration given to the school having a more traditional curriculum, like including auto tech, home economics, and so forth? And I know that gets into a curriculum question, and our curriculum representatives aren't here tonight, but maybe Mr. Ragsdale can address some of that.
Well, to a large degree, that is somewhat up to the school and the flexibility that the charter provides. Moving forward, of course, one of the other initiatives in SPLOST 4 is a career academy, and that is yet to be determined what that's going to be. In other words, is it going to be one free standalone facility? Probably not. Is it going to be multiple additions, i.e. wings, et cetera, at current schools that house various career pathways? Is it going to be divided up into all the high schools to create additional pathways? Those things have not been determined as of yet. So that's going to play into what each high school is able to offer as far as career pathways are concerned. If it were going to be a single standalone facility, which again, I don't think that that's going to be the case, then you would have to determine, okay, what is the target of that? Obviously, working in close coordination and partnership with our local universities and technical schools will play a role into that. But it's really difficult at this point in time to answer that question because it's an ever-evolving situation that we're in. And until we get into the real mix, into the real work of IE squared, which is what the board has voted for this district to go down the road, which will have no impact on Walton's charter as far as moving forward. But those kind of things will have to be determined after the flexibility and the IE squared contract has been negotiated and approved by the state.
And then some of you may have heard that within the state, there's been a move also. There's 17 different career pathways. And so individual schools, Walton certainly being one of those, they have an opportunity to kind of work with the district and the administration to determine which of those career pathways they'll be offering.
Okay, as we start to wind down our time here, I've grouped these questions together to try and get as many topics out here as we can. This one involves the bidding process in terms of how long will that take, how is that decision made, and when will that process begin?
In the Walton approach to this particular project, we are using a construction method called construction manager at risk. We already have our construction manager on board with us. It's Gilbane Building Company, and they in fact will be I guess utilizing their subcontractors to actually bid the work out as we come to each stage or each trade going forward. So the process has been utilized in several other school systems and several other construction projects, and they've been working very well with our design, helping us work through all the issues that we need to get through. They will continue to be working with us at the table as we finalize the design. The intent there is to try to prohibit as many changes once we start construction as possible. So Gilbane will be using their large myriads of subcontractors as they bid out each of the facets or each of the phases of our work.
During the ongoing plan development and construction, what is the plan for keeping neighboring homeowners informed about what's going on? And I'll extend that on to the entire Raider community.
Yes, we currently have software that we utilize whenever there's major construction that occurs around a school area. We notify, and we have a database that will allow us to send letters out to neighboring communities. Again, we will plan to have a follow-up to this particular meeting. Once we finalize our design, we can certainly come back together if Judy invites us, which I'm sure she will, to present our design and our site layout, the elevations, what the building may look like. I know Walton has a very dynamic website, so we will do our best to keep everyone informed as we progress, not only through letters to neighborhoods and communities, but also through community meetings like this, PTA meetings, as well as the website and any other avenue or vehicle that we can utilize to try to keep people informed.
And before I get to the hot topic that's come up during our conversation tonight, several questions were asked here that I honestly don't remember if I got the cards before or after they discussed this, but about adding additional land surrounding campus and if conversations taking place and so forth. I think the overriding answer to that question is that basically all options are on the table right now and that they're looking into those things, and there's some conversations ongoing to look at how they can maximize the current property and any possible surrounding property. So there's some anxiety out there among the audience because what some of them heard was we're increasing the school population to 3,500 students. So is that what the plan is, or where do you see the population of Walton High School going down the road? And I know we've talked about this along the way, but some of them just heard the 3,500 figure and are a little bit anxious about that.
Go ahead. I'll start, or Chris, you want to go?
Yeah, basically what we wanted to come back to is to find a way to do this project in SPLOST 4 in a timely manner. We have, when we I'll be honest with you, when we got the first demographic study back, it caused us a great deal of pause. We needed to stop and take a look with those kind of numbers. We needed to examine, okay, what do we truly need to build this building to house? Because obviously the bigger you build a building, the more FTE you try to accommodate, the higher the budget required is going to go. So when we got the first demographic study done, we took a second look at that. We dug into the numbers ourselves, and then we went back and looked at, over the past 10 years, some enrollment history for Walton. And again, as Nick has already mentioned, that the average growth was 7 FTE per year. So taking that into consideration, we believe that doing the right thing for Walton would be to build a building and have the campus be constructed such that we could accommodate 143 IUs and going up to over 400,000 square feet. The square footage increase is 43% increase, over 20% increase for the IU numbers. And so we believe that looking at the range of students, the FTE that will be accommodated by 143 units, that will accommodate what we need to for the current time period moving into a few years out from construction. And then that will give us a good idea of trend data as far as growth is concerned. Again, going back to the redistricting, that option is not, even been in consideration as far as this project is concerned. So what we wanted to do was build what we promised the community, what we promised the school to be able to build it the right way, and get it constructed in a timely manner, such that we're not talking about a 5, 8, even 10-year kind of building program, that we can get into a finished product with fine arts, with new academic building to house the students in 2 to 3 years. Now, if it is something that we need to add on to, we're taking that into consideration as the design is being completed. As far as funding for that, then we will need to look forward into additional funding mechanisms, such as an additional SPLOST, if that's where it needs to go. Because, again, this current SPLOST, the revenues are going to be collected through 2018. And so then moving forward, prior to that, of course, we will be constructing and creating the SPLOST notebook. So we will know well ahead of time whether or not we need to put accommodations for enhancements and additions onto the Walton campus. And that will also allow us to explore all the options possible as far as additional land and what needs to be housed on the additional land if that becomes a realization.
And one of the questions is about anticipated operating expenses for the new facility. And I don't know how broad that covers, but for example, the custodial allotment